Hey guys, we're going to continue a little bit more on our public health, and I wanted to talk about some recent health threats or events in the US. Um, it's interesting because right now we're going through oh goodness, we're going through the biggest one that I ever remember, or one of the biggest ones that I ever remember. So it's kind of interesting that um, knowing that we're living through something that's going to be extremely historical. So, but a few others, several of them. Well, they've all happened in your lifetime or close to your lifetime, but many of them you may not remember because you were pretty small. Um, Hurricane Sandy, okay, that was obviously a natural disaster that hit the US in 2012. It was the biggest hurricane we've ever had on the Atlantic um, side. Um, Cost about $71 billion in damages, okay, affecting 24 states. The greatest of those were in New York and New Jersey. Okay. Major flooding, tunnels, subway lines. That was a big time that public health came in and helped with um, some economic recovery things, setting up, um, safe places for people to go, ones that were displaced from their homes, that kind of thing. Okay. Salmonella and peanut butter in 2011. I don't know if I was living under a rock or what, but I do not remember much about this one at all. Um, I do remember my mom calling a couple of times with different numbers that were on the jars, saying, if you have any peanut butter jars that have these numbers, then you need to throw them away. And this was one that was recovered pretty quickly. They figured out the source of it and shut it down. So it wasn't a major threat um, to the public health. Then there was H1N1 epidemic in 2009. Um, this was that swine flu. Okay. Um, Caused about 17,000 deaths. Okay, between the end of 2009 and the start of 2010. So a lot of people. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, how many people we lose from accidents or cancer or suicides um, in a year or in that time period, but that was a pretty big one. And then we had the two most significant ones to me, and coincidentally, the PowerPoint mentioned them as the two biggest ones too. Okay, but we had Hurricane Katrina in 2005. That was a big hurricane, I think category 5, that came up into New Orleans, and then resulted in lots and lots of flooding after that, and in Mississippi. This was a big one for me personally, because it was the first time that Clay was deployed. Um, he goes on lots of different I don't want to call them missions, but for lack of better terms, missions to rescue people in different circumstances. We've had some localized flooding here in the last handful of years, but this was the first time he was really pushed out of state to help people across the country. We were very recently married. Um, I found out while he was gone, or suspected while he was gone, that I was pregnant with our first child. And so it was a big deal. It was one of those times where um, I was irritated because he was gone. Gas prices were high, and we had a lot of rain here. And then he would call and talk about um, just the total destruction that people were suffering with and from down there. And it kind of makes you realize that there's bigger problems out there. This was one that we heard so much on the news about, the Red Cross coming in and setting up shelters. And, they were trying to send people. I think there were people that came up even into like Kentucky and Tennessee because they were displaced from their homes for so long. Um, Animals being sent up from shelters. It was a major, major health threat. Okay, lots and lots of people were displaced from their homes and lost everything that they had. Um, I do remember Clay also talking about kind of like we're struggling right now sometimes to find the positive in things. And there were positive things that were happening in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And one of those things was um, he would talk very often about people that were literally standing on a pile of rubble, um, all that was left of everything they've ever had. And he would try to give them food or water because that's one of the tasks that they had him doing. And the people would say, no, give it to someone who needs it more than I do. So, kind of like I said, with right now, with people, so there's some people that are really feeling bad for themselves and things going on, but then there are other people that are really could be feeling bad for themselves, but are really looking to help other people or put a smile on other people's faces. So it's another time when the countries kind of come together. And then, of course, 9/11. I hadn't given it much thought until all of this started up recently with COVID, but that a lot of you all were very small babies during 9/11. And that was the last time I was a sophomore. I was a sophomore in college at UIndy, and that was the last time that the country has really just been rocked like we are right now. That life on September 10th, 2001 looked totally different than life on September 11th, 2001. And it's another time where the country really came together. Of course, you all know the story. We were under attack by terrorists, so it's a little bit different threat, but a big threat nonetheless. Okay, all of those are, like I said, we talked about how we're living through history, which is kind of hard to imagine at the time when you're going through it. It's hard to think about the fact that someday your kids, your grandkids will ask you what effect all of this had on your life. And we're finding more and more things that it's affecting every day. So just some recent threats in the US. And then yesterday we talked about the top 10 causes of death. We didn't really list them or anything like that, but we did mention them, and we talked about how which of those causes we think we're making progress on. Okay, the number one cause being heart disease, second cancer, chronic lower respiratory disease, stroke, accidents. Of course, like we talked about, we can put in some new safety features and things like that, but there's not a lot we can do for that. Accidents are going to happen. 6 is Alzheimer's, 7 diabetes, influenza and pneumonia, kidney disease, and then of course suicide being number 10. I want you to think about those and think about where COVID is going to fit in on that. Okay, and then we can talk about some things that public health is or isn't doing that might affect where that will fall when this is all said and done. Okay, that's all I have for you tonight. I hope that you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.